Let me attempt, go on and keep it real with you right now. See, some of y'all out here wondering, what attempt? Why do these married men keep finding their way to me? And you trying to act like you're confused, like you don't know what's going on to attempt. But let me tell you something. It ain't always about you being the problem, but baby, you might just be the pattern. See, married women don't chase random. They chase comfort, confidence, and what they think they missing. So today I'm gonna break it all the way down. Not to blame, but to build. Because once you understand the why, you'll never fall for the lie again. When a married man starts showing interest in a woman outside his marriage, it usually ain't just about looks or chemistry. It's about lack. See, a man will always seek out what he feels is absent in his life. If he's not being seen, heard, or appreciated at home, that void becomes loud. And that doesn't mean he's right for stepping out or even justified in his behavior. But it means there's a deeper reason than just temptation. A lot of married men are walking around feeling invisible in their own houses. He comes home, but the house don't feel like home no more. No smiles, no warmth, just routine, maybe arguments, maybe silence. And for a man, silence can be more painful than yelling because it makes him feel like he doesn't matter. So when he steps outside and meets someone who laughs at his jokes, asks about his dreams, looks him in the eye when he talks, that small attention feels like a big deal. He starts to feel like he's got value again. He feels alive. Now here's the twisting. It's not that you did something intentional to attract that attention. Sometimes just your energy, your positivity, your ambition, the way you carry yourself reminds him of who he used to be or who he wishes he was. You become the mirror of everything he thinks he's lost. If he feels overlooked, you noticing him gives him breath. If he feels nagged, your calm gives him peace. If he feels unappreciated, your compliments give him purpose. See, men don't always know how to communicate what they're going through. They weren't raised to talk about feelings. They were raised to work, to fix, to move forward. So when something's broken inside, they don't take it to therapy. They take it to distraction. And sometimes distraction shows up looking like you. Attempt. You might not have said a word, but he picked up on your softness, your smile, the way you asked him how he was doing and actually meant it. Attempt. That's something he might not have felt in years. Now listen, this ain't about making you feel guilty or saying you caused anything. It's about awareness, because a man that's lost in his marriage is drawn to light. And you, whether you know it or not, might be shining. He doesn't want to leave his wife. Most don't. What he wants is to feel like a man again, like he matters, like someone sees him beyond the bills, beyond the responsibilities, beyond the arguments and the fading spark. You just being you, become that emotional magnet. You represent freedom. You represent choice. You represent the version of himself he used to be proud of. But here's where it gets real. That attraction isn't about love. It's about escape. It's about convenience. It's about finding a patch to cover a tear in his life instead of fixing the whole garment. Attempt. You're not the solution. He's just avoiding the real problem. And deep down, part of him knows that. That's why it's secretive. That's why it's cautious. Because he's not prepared to make real change. He's just looking for relief. And relief always comes with a price. You didn't ask to be part of his escape plan, but that's what you became. Not by being wrong, but by being right in all the ways he feels wrong. And that's why you have to understand that this kind of attention, while flattering on the surface, is often rooted in his dysfunction, not your desirability. Your energy, your peace, became the medicine to his discomfort. And people will chase medicine long before they deal with healing. When a man feels emotionally malnourished, he's going to look for anything that feels like nourishment, even if it's temporary, even if it's not real, even if it's unfair to the person offering it. And that's the game. You weren't the cause. You were the comfort. You were the one who, by just being in your own skin, made him feel like somebody again. But that's somebody he becomes around you. That ain't the full picture. That's a man escaping his reality, not changing it. So while it might seem like you've got something special, thing to attempt, most of the time it's just something missing that's showing up, disguised as desire. And if you're not careful, you'll start thinking it's about you to attempt, when really it's about him trying to fill a hole he won't admit is there. Confidence is a magnet and independence is power. When you walk into a room knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, that energy doesn't whisper, it announces itself. And for some married men, especially those stuck in a cycle of routine, that attempt, that announcement is louder than anything they've heard in a long time. When a man has been married for years, he gets used to comfort. He gets used to the same conversations, the same schedule, the same emotional rhythm. But then here you come, unapologetically you, handling your business, smiling with no need for validation, loving yourself without waiting for someone else to do it first. That shakes a man up, especially one who hasn't felt that kind of spark in a long time. Your independence doesn't just attract him, it reminds him of freedom. Not freedom from his wife, but freedom from who he's become in that marriage. Sometimes in long-term relationships, people lose parts of themselves. They stop dreaming, stop pursuing, stop growing. And when he sees you, driven, ambitious, and thriving, he starts to see the reflection of a man he used to be, or worse, a man he never became. That's why your presence makes an impact. You represent possibility. You represent motion. You represent what life looks like when someone chooses not to settle. Now, let's not confuse this with physical attraction alone. This goes deeper. Married men who are seeking out other women aren't always doing it for sex. Often, it's emotional stimulation they crave. And your independence creates an emotional tension they haven't felt in a while. You're not clingy. You're not chasing. You're not waiting on him to make your day. That unsettles him in a way that also draws him in because he's used to being needed, not inspired. And you don't need him. Your life is moving whether he shows up or not. That's where the shift happens. A man that's ground comfortable with being in control now finds himself wondering how to earn your attention. He starts chasing something he doesn't even fully understand, your self-sufficiency. See, independence is not just about having your own money, your own goals, or your own place. It's about not looking at a man like he's your rescue plan. And when you don't have that desperation in your eyes, he sees value, attempt. And when a married man hasn't been feeling valuable at home, he becomes vulnerable to anyone who makes him feel like he's still got it. That's the hook. It's not always that he's trying to cheat. It's that he's trying to feel significant again. And you, just by being solid, become a symbol of that significance. Tempt. Your confidence tells him you've done the work. You've healed. You've grown. You've chosen yourself. And when he looks at that, part of him respects it, and part of him envies it, and part of him wants to be around it. Because confidence is contagious. And when someone's been living with doubt, insecurity, or emotional disconnect, confident energy feels like a drug. It's addicting. It wakes them up. But here's the truth. What they're drawn to in you isn't just attraction. It's admiration. They admire the way you speak with clarity, the way you make decisions, the way you don't flinch when life throws curveballs. And that admiration quickly gets confused with desire, not because he loves you, tempt, but because he wishes he loved himself like that. You're not an option he's ready to commit to. You're a reflection he's not ready to face. And that's why your independence can pull married men in like a moth to a flame. They want to be near it. They want to feel it, but they often don't have the capacity to handle it because handling a woman who knows her worth takes more than charm. It takes healing. It takes growth. It takes honesty. And many men seeking attention out of their marriage haven't done that work. They're trying to borrow your light instead of learning how to shine on their own. Your energy makes them feel alive, but it also exposes their stagnation. You didn't ask for that responsibility, but it comes with the territory when you carry yourself with power. Independence is not a look, it's a frequency. And that frequency either inspires people to rise or exposes the fact that they've been settling. And some married men are not attracted to you. They're attracted to the parts of themselves they abandoned. So when they see you tempt, they chase the version of themselves they think they can be again, not realizing that you're not here to fix broken people. You're not here to be a mirror, to attempt. You're not here to babysit potential. You're just living your truth. And sometimes that truth becomes a lighthouse for someone who's been lost for a long time. Some men don't chase love, they chase validation. They don't necessarily want to leave their wife or build something new, What they want is to feel like they still matter, like they still have it, like someone still sees them as important, attractive, capable. And often, without even knowing it, you become the one feeding that need. You didn't plan it. You didn't ask for it. But the way you smile when he talks, the way you listen without judgment, the way you carry yourself, it fills a void he won't even admit exists. See, married men who are emotionally unfulfilled start looking for places where they feel admired again. And admiration feels a lot like attention when your self-worth is running low. They're not always looking for commitment or connection. Sometimes they just want confirmation that they're still desirable, that someone still thinks they're impressive. And that's where the confusion begins. Because when you respond with kindness, when you show appreciation or curiosity, he starts reading it as something more. It becomes about ego, not emotion. It becomes about the feeling of being pursued or wanted again. You become a source of affirmation, not because you're offering love, but because you're reflecting something he hasn't felt in his own home for a long time. This isn't always about a bad marriage. Some men are married to amazing women, but are still emotionally immature. They get bored, they stop growing. They confuse stability with stagnation. And when a man hasn't evolved emotionally, he starts mistaking routine for rejection. He starts blaming his environment for what he's not creating. Instead of facing his dissatisfaction and fixing it from the inside, he starts reaching outside for anything that makes him feel good in the moment. That's where validation becomes more important than integrity. And that's when you unintentionally become the target. You may notice how he compliments your intelligence, your beauty, your energy. But if you look closely, it's not really about you. It's about how he feels in your presence. When he talks to you, he feels confident again. When you laugh at his joke, he feels charismatic again. When you remember something he told you, he feels significant again. Those are powerful emotions for someone who's been living in quiet emotional hunger. It's not love. It's a mirror. You reflect back to him what he wishes his wife would, or what he wishes he felt about himself. That's not romance. That's recovery. And the problem is, he's using your attention as medicine without ever addressing the sickness. Now, here's the dangerous part. When a man is validation hungry, he becomes manipulative without even knowing it. He'll say things that make you feel like you're special, like you understand him better than anyone else. He'll create a fantasy bond built on emotion, not intention. He may tell you how unhappy he is at home, not because he's leaving, but because he wants sympathy. He may talk about how different you are, how you get him, how he's never met anyone like you. But pay attention to the pattern. If all of his words lead back to how you make him feel, attempt, and not what he's willing to do, you're not in a relationship. You're in a feedback loop built on ego. This is why so many women get confused when dealing with married men, because the lines get blurred between emotional intimacy and actual intent. It feels like he cares, but really, he cares about how he feels when he's around you. And once he gets that emotional high, he doesn't necessarily want to build anything with you. He just wants to revisit that feeling over and over. You're not his partner. You're his emotional recharge station. It's easy to get caught up in it, especially when you're in a space where you want to feel wanted or seen. Emotional connection can feel deep, even when it's built on the shallow need for validation. But if you strip away the compliments, the long conversations, the attention, what's left? If there's no action, no clarity, accountability, then what you have isn't love. It's dependency. He's leaning on you to fix something broke in him and calling it chemistry. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to how a man shows up, not just how he makes you feel. Because when someone is validation seeking, they will give you the illusion of meaning without the foundation of commitment. They will borrow your present to escape their reality. And in doing so, they might make you feel chosen when in fact, you're just being used as a temporary cure for long-term confusion. Knowing your worth changes the entire game. It changes how you walk, how you talk, how you allow people to approach you, and most importantly, how long you let them stay. When you really know who you are and what you bring to the table, you stop sitting at tables where love is served in halves and truth is bent to convenience. Married men can sense when a woman doesn't fully know her value. They can feel it in how easily she responds to the little compliments, how quickly she explains away red flags, how softly she excuses disrespect dressed as attention. But when you're rooted in your worth, your boundaries are unshakable to attempt. You don't get caught up in the fantasies offering because you're already grounded in the reality you've built for yourself. A woman who knows her worth isn't impressed by inconsistent effort. She doesn't get pulled into the drama. I'm stuck in a bad marriage, or we're living like roommates. She knows that a man who is really unavailable, even if he swears he's emotionally checked out, is still unavailable. There's no halfway when it comes to loyalty, and no matter how charming he is, how convincing his story sounds, she doesn't allow herself to become an accessory to someone else's confusion. Knowing your worth means you don't settle for being the exception because you know you're the standard. You know that your time, your energy, your peace, and your body aren't up for negotiation with someone who hasn't even finished what he already started somewhere else. When you truly value yourself, you're not afraid to walk away from situations that look good but feel off. You listen to your intuition. You honor your gut. You stop entertaining people who only show up when it's convenient for them. Married men will always test the boundary if they sense the door is cracked. They'll push just enough to see how much you'll allow. But when you're solid in who you are, that door stays closed. Not out of fear, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for yourself and for what you deserve. You start to recognize that being pursued isn't the same as being valued. Just because someone is consistent in their chase doesn't mean they have good intentions. Some men pursue simply because they want to prove to themselves they still can. They want to see if they still have access. But when you know your worth, access becomes a privilege, not a default. People don't get to enjoy your energy just because they're charming or broken or bored. They have to come correct or not come at all. You stop letting people dip in and out of your life because you understand that temporary interest wastes permanent time. A woman rooted in self-worth holds herself to a higher standard, not because she's perfect, but because she knows what inconsistency cost her. She knows the emotional hangover that comes after a man feeds her words he never planned to live by. She knows the heartbreak of hoping someone will leave a situation they were never really trying to end. She knows how much it takes to heal after building castles out of promises and finding out the foundation was a lie. And because she's been through all that, she's no longer impressed by the illusion of romance. She needs real. She needs honest. She needs someone who's available in every way. Not just in stolen moments or hidden conversations. Knowing your worth also changes the way you talk to yourself. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, not me. You don't internalize rejection from men who were never ready. You don't wonder if you weren't enough. You realize that sometimes being too much is exactly what keeps you from being mishandled. You become too self-aware to fall into traps disguised as love. You see the game and refuse to play. Because the version of you that knows her worth no longer needs attention to feel validated. She's already whole. She's already chosen to attempt. And that wholeness scares people who are still hiding from their own brokenness. You stop needing closure from people who never intended to give you clarity. You stop trying to make sense of mixed signals because you're no longer available for confusion. And when someone shows you who they are, especially when their actions and their status don't align with their words, you don't try to translate it into hope. You take it for what it is and move forward. You recognize that someone else's inability to choose you properly is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. And you don't shrink to fit those limits anymore. You expand, you elevate, and you demand energy that matches your own.